Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
It's time for Q&A 33.
Woot. I like numbers that are palindromes, even if it's a tiny one.
3 is one of my lucky numbers.
Oh.
7 is my other lucky number. So
7 is, I think, like one of the most common lucky / favorite numbers, like
so
under
cliche.
the sun. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I get it. It's one of mine too. But I just think it's funny that we're so drawn to that number.
Right?
Humans are weird.
Huh? Yep.
Right.
You go first today, Kate.
I go first today. Let's see. This one reads, what skills would you use for combating birthday blues? Thinking of all the things I haven't accomplished, and this year how I won't have a party or anything going on. I have no local friends. Things are weird with my partner, and he doesn't do birthday stuff anyway. I already have a pity party going on. Radical acceptance? Something else?
Yeah. I don't know. People go very different ways when it comes to birthdays.
It's
I have
true.
some people in my life who, including my husband, who they do not want anybody to know it's their birthday, right?
One of my exes was like that.
Yeah, like they don't want it acknowledged, like, at all. And then you have other people who, if you do not go all out to celebrate their birthday, or they do like a birthday week, or like that kind of thing, and then you have everything in between, right? So, I don't know exactly where this listener falls on that spectrum, though I would say maybe more towards the latter than the former. I don't know. The first thing that came up that had like nothing at all to do with DBT, though, was like COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people have not had, or been able to really celebrate or gather with people, for at least one birthday, if not 2, depending on the circumstances. And yeah, that does feel different, especially if your birthday's something you look forward to. So I don't know if this necessarily was super influenced by COVID, but I imagine.
Yeah, I think that's why I thought that this year. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. All the things I haven't accomplished, and this year I'm just kind of like, cut yourself some slack with COVID. Very first thing, right? These are things that are outside of your control. But kind of what I was thinking of in terms of what you can do about this, if you're wanting to bring the pity party that you mentioned to a halt and change direction, the best thing to do is to focus on what you can control. The thing, too, I think about birthdays inherently is that there are, even though it is your birthday, once you start involving other people, there may be a lot of things you can't control, right? If you decide to throw a birthday party, you can't control who necessarily shows up or not. You can't control what gifts you get. You can't control whether people remember or forget your birthday. I mean, there's just a lot of things that what can happen is that you get your expectations up about some things, and then people don't meet your expectations, and then you feel disappointed. That can happen a lot with birthdays. So what I recommend is focusing on what you can control. You can't control other people's behavior or whether they view your birthday as something important or not, or whether they get you what you wanted or not. But what you can control is how you spend your time on your birthday. So like I would recommend incorporating some pleasant events into your day. Like I'll speak just for myself. Maybe it's just my introverted nature, but I try to have it be that on my birthday, rather than focusing, I mean, I do try to celebrate with other people, right? Like go out to dinner with my husband or with my parents or that kind of a thing. I do try to spend some time with other people, but I really try to have it be like a day for me. Like a day where I'm maybe doing something special for myself that I wouldn't normally do. So trying to get something on my calendar that I can look forward to that has nothing to do with other people is really just for me. And using that as a way to kind of treat myself on my birthday. So maybe that would be helpful for you, especially because, like you said, you're not going to have a party this year. You don't have many local friends. See if there's something you can do for yourself as a pleasant event that would feel good and nourishing for you when your birthday comes around.
I like that. I don't know. It's only sort of related to what you were saying, Michelle, but you were reminding me of, oh gosh, it must have been 5-ish years ago now when I baked my first cake. Baked the first thing I ever baked, which, by the way, you got to taste, I think. Weren't you at work that day? I think you were.
I think I was, probably.
Yeah. Anyway, I realized one year that in all probability, no one was ever going to make me a birthday cake ever again. And so if I wanted birthday cakes, I better get into making them for myself.
Yeah.
Which just made me think of
about willingness. I'm realizing too a little bit. You could either be willful of like, why doesn't anybody make me a cake on my birthday? Or you could be like, fuck it, I'm going to make a cake on my own.
Yep. Anyway, that's what made me think of they control what you can. Like,
and
all the other stuff. Like, I can't control anybody else, but I can make sure I get a birthday cake.
Yep.
So the thing is, I was thinking about, I don't know, a lot of them are sort of DBT skill-ish. They may not quite exactly fit, but I think the theme works or something like that. So the first one I thought about was cope ahead, or I know I never remember to think about the other one, but effective rethinking with paired relaxation. But just something so that you sort of figure out ahead of time how you want to cope with how you might feel on that day, like actually on your birthday. Kind of plan for it and figure out what's going to work best for you, how you can best take care of yourself. In that regard, I have here self-soothe-ish. Because self-soothe, again, I think is meant to be sort of a calming, like kindness and a little bit more time limited. But I'm imagining kind of an entire day, which is kind of like what Michelle was saying, where the day is just for you, right? And so, it may not be the things you would most want to be doing that way due to all of the limitations that you mentioned, and I'm sure some that you didn't. But what can you do? What feels good? Like, can you make sure you eat only food that you really love that day? Can you watch your favorite comfort movies? Can you, like what can you use that's just, I don't know, self-kindness? To try and bolster what that day can be like, which I realize, Michelle, is very similar to your incorporate pleasant events thing. It's the same thing, different words, really. But I also thought that just to help with like how you are right now, the pity party that's going on right now, the two things that you might find would be mindfulness and or check the facts, right? Like oftentimes when things aren't how we want them, I think slipping into kind of a space of, as you were saying, Michelle, willfulness, right? We can get this kind of inflated sense of how shitty everything is. Not that there aren't shitty things, but that shittiness can kind of loom larger than it is in reality. And so I thought that check the facts might help you kind of bring it back to earth. Still, it's not, I totally get it. I thankfully have only had to miss one birthday because of COVID. I snuck my last one in literally less than 10 days before our state at least shut down entirely. So I really was cutting it close to the wire. But I'm normally someone who likes to throw parties and do stuff like that for my birthday. So I do understand the sad trombones, womp, 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 of not getting, the kind of celebration that you want or would usually be able to rely upon. And sometimes we can get overly focused on the things we can't have, the things we won't be able to do. And so I thought a combination of check the facts and mindfulness might help bring you back to what fully is real, including some of the good stuff. Because I'm betting there's some good stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, those were the kind of things I thought about for both how to look ahead at the birthday coming up, what to do on the day of, and maybe how to exit just a little bit, exit out of the pity party. Though also, I will say, an amount of pity party is probably okay. It's just how long are you spending there, and how severe are you? Yeah, it's totally okay to be sad about. Just not necessarily wallowing in the pity pool forever. Or in the deep end. Stay in the shallows. Yes, exactly. Find the things that you can be joyous about. Whatever they may be.
Yep. Nice. Okay, this one, also relatively short. It says, does anyone know where in DBT it teaches us that we can't make someone feel anything or be responsible for anyone's actions but our own?
So, now that we say this, Michelle, I remembered that I was going to ask you about my answer before we started, but you just fact checked me. I think I remember the closest thing to this, and it's not exactly this, but on the skills training assumptions page, isn't that what that one's called?
Yes.
Okay, where it says something about, like, we may not have caused our problems, but we're responsible for fixing them. It's not exactly that we can't control other people thought, but I thought, I was racking my brain for where in DBT it said it. I was like, I don't think it, I mean, maybe it does. Ooh. You know, there's a lot of different, books and stuff from DBT, and Michelle and I have far from read all of them. But on the stuff that we teach regularly, that skills training page was what I could think of for the closest sentiment. But that being aside, it's just a good idea. It's a sound principle, whether it comes from DBT or not, right? We can influence people, though we don't always have control over how what we do influences them. But we still can't make someone do something or feel something. And no matter what we do, if someone even tells us, like, if you do X, then I'm going to do Y. You don't, even if you do X, that doesn't make you responsible for them doing Y. That's still a choice that they made. Which, by the way, I understand is real difficult because I struggled with that a lot with my mother. Just that my mom was real fond of that if you, then I kind of way of doing things. And so for a long time that worked to control me because then I would feel responsible for her doing the thing. So it took my blessed therapist an awful long time to drill into my head that even if someone tells you what they're going to do in response to your actions, it doesn't make you responsible for what they did. That's still their choice. So yeah, I don't have any firm DBT on there either, other than it's a good idea anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're right. It does say something on that page. I don't know if we have that page posted anywhere in the Facebook group. But if you guys like Google search, I don't know, maybe while I'm answering, maybe you can just Google like skills training assumptions, DBT, and see if you can find the worksheet. I imagine it'll pull right up if you Google it. But yes, it does mention it there. The thing that I was thinking of reading this is that honestly, this is something that's talked about a lot with CBT. And if you don't know what CBT stands for, because there's a lot of acronyms in the therapy world, CBT stands for cognitive behavior therapy. So, right? Similarity there with DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. Just the first letter is different. Developed by different people, all of that. But DBT does incorporate elements of CBT. And one of the big things, I would say the cornerstone of cognitive behavior therapy is that our thoughts influence our actions. So if we can change what we're telling ourselves in our brains, that's probably going to change how we act and behave, more or less. So this is something that's really commonly talked about with cognitive behavior therapy, which is kind of trying to connect these dots between something happens and then I do something in response. But there's stuff that happens in between that because you are thinking something and feeling something. So I think I've talked about this in a previous episode, or it might have been a Q&A specifically, but I kind of think of it this way, where if you think of it kind of like a flow chart, like an event happens, something, right? Doesn't have to be anything major or shocking, but something happens. Then it leads to us having a thought about that thing that just happened. Then we feel an emotion about it, and then we do something about it. And that thinking and feeling piece in the middle, that can happen in milliseconds.
Yeah.
Like that can happen so fast that we're not consciously aware of it. Sometimes we're very consciously aware of it. We may know exactly what we're thinking and feeling in that moment. But there's many times where we don't know. Because it happens so quickly. And CBT is really there to kind of slow us down and get us to look at what was the thought, you know, and how did that thought influence what we felt emotionally, and how did both of those things together influence the action that we then took. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because with this question of like how, you know, we can't make someone feel anything, we can't be responsible for anyone's actions. Exactly. Because you know what? We can't control that middle piece for someone else. We can't control what thoughts are going to go through someone's head or what emotion they're going to experience. And those are the two key things that then influence what they do in response. But we have no control over that. And nobody has control over that for us either. The only thing that we have control over to even any degree is that first thing, right? Which is an event happens. So we can, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. But I don't know. Let's say I say something to Kate. I don't know what it would be. Something that Kate might interpret as hurtful. Maybe I say something critical to her, something like that. And then Kate says back to me something mean in return, right? She snaps back at me. I am only in charge of what I said to her, but I don't know what filter that went through that then led to her responding to me the way she did. So that's the only thing we can take responsibility for, is like, oh, well, now that I know that you felt that way, I'll try not to say that again, kind of a thing. But I use this example commonly sometimes with clients of like, you know, two people can go watch the same movie and have completely different experiences of it. One person may love it, one person may hate it. Same event. They're doing the same thing. But both of them are having different thoughts about that. Both of them are having different emotions about that. And so therefore they have different outcomes. One comes out of the movie theater feeling like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. And the other person comes out being like, I hated that. Let's go home. It's not really the movie's fault. The movie didn't do anything wrong. It's all about the filters. We all have filters. We all have our own thoughts and emotions about things. And we cannot control what another person is going to think or feel. So that's kind of how I conceptualize it.
I like it.
If that makes sense.
Our next one, would you believe it, is also pretty short.
Yeah.
It's an episode of short ones. We're going to blow through. This one says, what are your go-to skills for phobias and their subsequent panic attacks? I just go down a dark hole of obsessive thoughts and worry about this phobia I have, and I can't find anything that works well to stop it.
Ooh, yeah. Phobias are really tricky. And admittedly, not my area of expertise. Not something I spend a whole lot of time treating or working with clients on in my practice. So take what I'm going to say with a grain of salt, listener. Like, I mean, I want you to take this in. And also, this is one where I feel like it's really important for us to give the disclaimer of like, we are not your therapist.
Nope.
So we're going to give some general guidelines and recommendations, but honestly, if you don't already have a therapist to be helping you with this, it would be great to consider finding one if you have resources available in your area to start working with somebody who could help you with this. Because again, we don't know what your specific phobia is or anything like that. So super general guidance here about what could maybe help. And I'm not going to touch on anything DBT related. Kate is, but I'm not. So some of this may be helpful, some of this may not. Like with anything, you know, you may try something and get great results. You may try something and it might not land or resonate for you. So I'm going to give a couple different ideas. But again, this is stuff that you would explore with a therapist. Don't do this on your own. Sometimes for some people, it can be helpful to try to find the roots of the phobia. Now, sometimes these roots might be pretty obvious if you go through, a traumatic event kind of a thing. one day the phobia, like I'll think of a phobia that actually I feel like comes up as a common example that I've heard many times when it comes to treating phobias. People get bit by a dog.
Oh yeah.
I hear this one a lot. So that's pretty clear, right? One day you are probably moving through the world fine with dogs. And then one day you had an encounter with a dog, you got bit, you got injured, and well, moving forward, you now have a phobia of dogs, right? That's a pretty clear connection. But processing through that event can be helpful. How did that event really change or influence you? What were things like before that? What are things like now? Some things, it just may feel like it's a phobia that's always been there. Like it's just harder to kind of pinpoint when it began or why. But for some people, there can be benefits to exploring and talking through that with a therapist so that you just gain a better understanding of like why that thing is a phobia for you in the first place, if it isn't very clear. So that can be helpful. Another thing that can be helpful, and I kind of thought of focusing work that I do with people when I wrote down this suggestion, but is to notice what happens in your body. And basically, like, I mean, you mentioned, right, a panic attack. And for many people, panic attacks have kind of their own script, I would say. Everybody's script might be a little bit different. But like when you have a panic attack, you could have 10 panic attacks and probably all of them are going to be about the same. Some might be worse than others. But there's that kind of obvious, well, I know how it feels in my body when I'm having a panic attack. But just what happens in your body the minute you start to think of this thing that you have the phobia of? What starts to happen? Do you start to feel warm? Does a certain part of your body start to shake or tremble? Just what do you notice happening in your body before the full-blown panic attack? There's probably something that simmers a little bit beforehand. And what can be helpful is figuring out, and again, this is work to do with a therapist, not on your own. I'm going to keep saying that.
So many disclaimers. You're going to have made more disclaimers than advice.
So many disclaimers. But a therapist can really help guide you in that process of being able to like kind of safely keep your body company when you're experiencing or thinking about a phobia. This is the whole rationale behind one therapeutic treatment, which is exposure therapy, is that basically you learn, like you slowly but surely start getting exposed to the thing you have the phobia with, and your body's going to have a physiological reaction, but you start to notice really what happens in your body, and you start getting tools to kind of
bring yourself back to baseline.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, so that you don't get flooded, so that it doesn't wind up at the point where you're having a panic attack. And the other thing that I recommend, this is something that you can do without a therapist, so I'll say that. This one you can actually do on your own. When you might notice yourself thinking about the phobia, right? You're not exposed to it. You're not actually in an unsafe situation. You're just thinking about it. Like, let's say your phobia is flying on an airplane and you have a trip coming up in 2 weeks and you catch yourself thinking about how it's going to feel when the airplane's taking off, and you start to have a panic attack as you're thinking about that and anticipating how that's going to feel. You're not actually on the plane yet. You're just thinking about it, right? So when you have times of thinking about the thing that you have the phobia with, really, you know, you can come up with a mantra for this if you want to, but like really try to remind yourself that you are safe where you are. Put your feet on the ground, you know, look around the room and tell yourself that you are safe. and try to really practice some mindfulness. There's my DBT skill that I'll throw in. Really try to practice some mindfulness there of what you're currently seeing and experiencing in your environment. Notice the smells, notice what you see and can hear, and remind yourself that you are safe. You are not currently on that airplane. You're not there. You are in the here and the now, and you are safe. And that may also hopefully bring a potential escalating panic attack back down a little bit. Again, it's much more difficult when you're actually on the airplane, so to speak, and you're actually exposed to the thing that is your phobia. That's a different ball game. But that can be a helpful thing if you just catch yourself worrying about it a lot. Like you mentioned, going down a dark hole of obsessive thoughts. Bring yourself back to the present and remind yourself that you're safe. So, those are the things I could think of. And I know you have a few DBT things to throw in here, Kate. I said a lot. So.
You said a lot. Insert here all of Michelle's disclaimers. There we go. So actually, though, while you were thinking, I did think about a different one, which is just to address specifically the obsessional thinking, is I would lean hard probably on the T in accepts.
Oh, yeah, the thoughts part.
Yep. I will stand forever by my four-letter words starting with the letter L. Listing those off, and or if you need the real shove off of the thought track that you're on, the counting backwards from 1,000 by increasing prime numbers. If your obsessional thinking manages to happen at the same time as that last one, I bow to the majesty of your brain, because that's impressive. But yeah, no, anything that really occupies your thoughts, so that you, in a way, can't think about your phobia. On the other hand, in thinking of it intentionally, rather than sort of tripping and falling down an obsessional hole, I did think about effective rethinking with paired relaxation, right? We'll just take Michelle's example of an airplane, flying. So you would, basically try and imagine yourself getting on an airplane or sitting down, getting ready for takeoff or whatever, and you would practice some sort of mantra, some sort of new thought about it, maybe like the I'm safe, right? This is okay and I'm safe, and so relax, right? The whole thing. So that as a way to kind of prepare yourself for exposure. And you could either be couching that in I know I'm taking a trip next week, or I'm just going to practice this because likely I'll get on a plane again sometime in my life, right? It doesn't have to be about a specific incident that's coming up. If it's something more general like spiders, Michelle can talk to this one a little bit more. You don't know when you're going to see a spider. You don't know. Yep. So you can't prepare for that time you're going to see a spider next week. But you could plan more generally for how you will think when you see a spider. So that's one thing I thought about. And then just for the panic attacks themselves, I tend to think of TIP for panic attacks, just because, there's anxiety attacks, there's panic attacks, and you said there's not, there's a scale to these things, but most people I know that would describe themselves as having panic attacks, that is a state of being super flooded. Just, woof, off the deep end emotionally. And so TIP can do a lot to help bring you back to a place where you can use more thoughts, deliberate thoughts, as opposed to kind of your brain and body running away with you. So,
yeah, that really is the go-to one when, like, the panic attack is here. It's happening.
Yep, you are in the midst.
Get out of it. Yep, yeah, use some TIP. Okay.
Last one.
Last one, yes. Arguably, our longest today for sure. But
yes.
Short, relatively, to what we get with some Q&As. Okay, this one says, any helpful DBT skills for processing a breakup? I was diagnosed with BPD and I was with my boyfriend for 2 years, which was my first ever relationship. I'm 22 and I was the one who left the relationship, yet I recently discovered my fear of abandonment still gets triggered, sometimes to the point where I feel like he left me. especially because it's only been 3 months and he has a new partner now. I've been distracting myself with going out and watching Netflix, but sometimes it's hard to feel my emotions when I don't know why they're coming up. I'll get triggered when I see certain posts with him and his girlfriend, so I try not to look at that, but any tips on processing the relationship? I guess it's kind of like grief, but any skills or activities in particular that I could do that can help me take this ball of thoughts and feelings and understand them? I also definitely think I blocked out a lot of the memories of the relationship too. And it says, love you guys so much. Thanks for all you do.
Aw, very sweet. So let's see. I had a few different thoughts, and I'm not sure that I wrote them down in the order I actually want to say them in. So I'm actually going to do my second one first, which is mindfulness of emotions. Mindfulness of emotions, right? So it says like the take this ball of thoughts and feelings and understand them. And I think that mindfulness of emotions is a great starting place for that kind of thing. Both to help you have a really firm understanding of all that you are feeling, because probably there's a lot of different emotions going on in this situation for this listener. But oftentimes that actually can give you decent insight into where the emotions are coming from too, right? Mindfulness by its nature gives you this one little half step back from whatever you're going through so that you can observe it instead of just being in it. And sometimes being in our feelings, like really in them, in all the feels, does a fair amount to block our view, shall we say, of what's causing them. And so I think mindfulness of emotions could sort of serve a dual purpose there. Though I will say, feelings gonna feel. We don't always get to know where they're coming from or why they're coming up. Our brains have, I don't even know the number, billions upon billions of connections, I think. Right? Like, yeah. Mind-boggling, amounts of connections. And sometimes we don't know what two things just got connected by something we saw or felt or smelled or like, it makes sense, but we're never gonna know how or why it makes sense. So, to that extent, I think, I don't know, radical acceptance and radical acceptance light. Radical acceptance for the relationship is done. He's got a new person. This is where we are, right? Like just the situation as a whole is what it is. And, you know, sometimes when we can really accept where we are, doesn't always. I want to put that out there, but it can at times tone down the emotionality around the thing. Because sometimes an amount of our emotionality and an amount of our suffering is coming from fighting reality, denying reality, trying to make it be something that it isn't. And so even if we still feel just as shitty about the situation itself, radical acceptance can sometimes help us feel less shitty about how we feel about it. I don't know, that was a weird way of putting it, right? But take away some of the meta shitty and make the load just a little bit lighter. And then I thought radical acceptance light was just the accepting that sometimes you're not going to know why your feelings show up. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make them any less, I don't know, not acceptable, valid. There we go. Right? Our feelings are just as valid whether we know what sparked them or not. Right? So it isn't actually said in here, but reading between the lines, I could imagine that there's some negative self-talk around feelings that you don't know where they're coming from. Kind of like, what even is this? Why am I feeling this way? This is stupid. I didn't do anything. And so I would caution against that, as always. And say just, you know, we just have to accept it. Sometimes we feel random ass things, or seemingly random things. If we could actually understand the totality of our brain all at once, we'd understand. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. We just don't know how. And so, yeah, just being in a place of, all right, I'm having this feeling. Whether I know why or not, this is where I am. So how do I move through this feeling given that this is what I'm feeling? Whether I understand why or not. And then last but never least, and because I have to say it, and I don't know if I've said it. I have said it once. All right.
Yeah, you did already say it today.
Oh, whatever. Anyway, self-soothing.
Yeah, it really applies.
Right, with that sadness, also the fear of abandonment. I just, think about getting like cozied up in a in a blanket or a sweater or something, maybe cuddling with a teddy bear, right? There's real sweet, kind ways of taking care of yourself when you're feeling that fear and that sadness and that hurt. So those are my things.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree. And I'm going to add on more, especially when the listener is talking about like what activities, like what can I do to kind of move through this grief?
Yeah.
So I'm going to get to that. The first thing though, and I don't know, maybe I'd be like really picky. I know it's a very small part of what this listener said, but it feels important to address. And I don't know actually if this has been said on the podcast at any point, but I kind of get up on a high horse a little bit when people are like, I tried to distract myself by watching TV or movies. Because don't get me wrong, I watch a lot of TV. I will own that. Watching TV and movies is great for many reasons. Like, it truly can be good to just like unwind, give ourselves a mental break, because actually they've done studies that show that like our brainwave activity is at like its lowest when we're watching TV.
Yeah, lower than when we're asleep, isn't it?
Something like that. Like, our brains are literally like not functioning when we're watching TV. So it can be really helpful for that. Here's the thing that it's not so good for. It's not so good for distraction. So when I hear people say things like this listener did of like, I've been distracting myself. Well, they do say with going out, so that's good. And watching Netflix, I'm like, and I'm guessing the Netflix is not cutting it. I mean, maybe it is.
Which is funny. I do it more, but for like the Ian accepts a lot of the times, because sometimes it will help me shift out of an emotional state. So it's not necessarily a distraction, but like I can be prodded emotionally by movies and TV.
Yeah.
I'm not distracted, but I'm shifted.
Yes, and
it's a distraction. It's not always great because your brain has plenty of space to wander.
Exactly. It's exactly that. And like we talked about this in one Q&A where someone was like, can you even like watch like TikTok videos and Netflix like mindfully? You can do anything mindfully. So, I mean, maybe, but it's exactly what Kate just said. Your brain is given a lot of space to wander when you're sitting there just watching a screen. It's not going to be, and engrossing probably on your brain enough. And so when it comes to distractions, I mean, again, there are 7 letters and accepts. Arguably, I mean, and DBT does say this, that TV does fall under the A for activities, but there are so many more things that will be far more distracting. So just something to think about. If that's what you're really wanting, is like, I've been ruminating and thinking about my ex all day and I need to get my mind off of him. Yep. Leave the TV behind. It's far better to do something physically with your body. I don't even mean like exercise, but just like move your body. Like cooking, gardening.
Jinx.
What'd you say? Book?
No, cook. You said cook. I said cook.
Yeah.
We both said cooking at the same time. So jinx.
That's funny. Like do something physical that can really help. Find something within the menu of accepts that will be more distracting, because TV isn't probably going to make the cut. So random thing I honed in on, but I was like, oh no, that's not going to probably help you in the way that you want. Other activities, these again, Kate, you say it's my superpower of like, what DBT skills do they fall under?
Yep.
I'm struggling to think of it right now. These are just things that I talk about with my clients a lot who are going through relationships ending, because it's a common thing that I work with in my practice. I'm a huge fan of writing letters you don't send. Huge fan. There are probably some unfinished things that you wish you could say to him. Wise mind would probably tell you to not say these things to him. But you can write them down and then do whatever you want with that letter besides actually showing it to him. So I'm a big fan of writing letters you won't send. Similar train of thought there. Big fan of journaling, because Kate talks about this. Take this ball of thoughts and feelings and understand them. That's what journaling does. I mean, beautifully, right? Just start writing out your thoughts. And you'd be surprised how that might help you kind of take a step back, get some clarity, process them. I'm just a big fan of journaling.
I can't think of a DBT skill it falls under either.
You don't know what DBT skill it falls under? I know.
Which is funny.
I don't either.
Because journaling, it seems like it ought to.
It's like close to wise mind. It's a path to wise mind. I
there
think that's
you go.
probably about as close as I could get. But like, it doesn't fall under anything from accept, because it's not about distracting you from what you're feeling. It doesn't really fall under anything from improve.
Nope, it's not radical acceptance. It's not pros and cons.
It's not self-soothing with the 5 senses.
It's not cope ahead. It's not the ABCs. It's not. Obviously, it's not dear man, give or fast.
It's aggravating.
No. Wait. Hold on. Almost.
Do you have an idea?
No. I was like, if we squint really hard, maybe the validation of self-validation? I mean, like you're giving voice to yourself? I don't know, man.
I mean,
I'm trying
real
real hard.
It's a mindfulness practice.
Hey, there we go.
You know, I mean, it falls under that, like, I guess, very loosely. But, yeah, journaling kind of stands alone. And I just think there can be so many benefits from it. So many. So, write out your thoughts. Even if they don't seem to make sense to you, they don't need to necessarily. Just start writing, and see where it takes you and how you feel before and after. I'm also a big fan of talking through things with the breakup with the trusted other. Caveat to this, not a trusted other who's going to be like, he was such an asshole, I'm so glad you broke up with him. No. Not that. A trusted other who's going to understand that you are grieving. And who's going to be able to hold space for you when you want to call that person at, when you're calling your trusted other at 2 a.m. to be like, I just miss him. I kind of wish I hadn't ended things. You need that trusted other who's going to be like, yeah, I know. You really cared about him. Like, you're going to need someone who's going to use some give with you, for sure. So those are things I recommend. The thing about breakups, it really is this fine line and this balancing act, which this listener actually speaks to pretty nicely, between how do I, quote unquote, move on, aka distract myself, do things for myself, have my own life, that kind of a thing. And also, how do I process that, like, I still think about this person and I have grief about this person not being in my life anymore. And that is the balancing act. And some days you are going to be in a place where all you can think about is that person. And honestly, like, if those days are happening, do some of the other stuff I talked about, right? Like writing that letter, journaling. He's on your mind for a reason. Rather than try to just like shove him out, let's look at why. Let's spend some time there, to really give yourself some space to explore what's coming up for you emotionally. And then there may be some days where you're like, yeah, not really maybe thinking about him too much, feeling okay. Awesome. Those are the days to be like, I'm going to have some friends over and cook dinner, right? I'm going to, whatever it may be. And I also, random thoughts, sorry. Other things that I recommend, as like activities, because I'm a big fan of this, make 2 playlists. Playlists for the songs that it's like, I am sad, I am grieving, I am thinking about him, I need to be in my feels. And a playlist for like, these are my songs that lift me up, make me feel good. I feel awesome when I listen to this and feel like my most empowered self. This is actually a thing that I have done for almost like every relationship that I've had that's ended. And I just put on whichever playlist I feel like I need most that day. And so music can be very, very, very helpful in the healing process, either as kind of a distraction or as a way to help you access those feelings and keep them company So make playlists. That's another activity you can do. That's all I'm going to say. I could keep going with this stuff, but I'm going to stop there.
I love it. I just think it's funny because, I guess literally no one listening to this probably knows Michelle and I in person. But I'd say most people that know us would say that I am the far more loquacious of the two of us. I'm talkative AF. I know, that's why it just makes me laugh so hard. Because I'm like, normally I'm the person that people can't shut up. I just keep talking and talking and talking. And then in Q&As, I'm like, here's my answer. Boop. And it's generally a lot shorter than yours, and I just think that's fucking hilarious. So I just giggle. It's not so much at what you're saying as the fact that I'm like, I feel like, am I under talking? Because Michelle says so much more than me.
Yeah. This is sometimes why people think I'm an extrovert, is because when you get me in the right setting, I'm super comfortable and I will talk until there's no tomorrow. But then in other settings, like a more social gathering, multiple people type of setting, then I'm going to clam up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But
it's cute.
In this setting where it's just you and I and our recorders and all you listening, I don't know, I could go on.
I love it. I forgot to say this before, but I will say that if you Google DBT skills training assumptions, you will in fact find it. That is there.
Awesome.
So for those of you who haven't seen that, because you're right, I don't think we've had any reason to post it.
Nope.
And otherwise, I guess that's it for this. I always want to say edition. Anyway, episode, whatever. If you would like to be featured on a future Q&A, please feel free to email us, dbtandmepodcast@gmail.com, or go ahead and post in the Facebook group. A good portion of what ends up in the Q&As comes from the Facebook group. So, and you'll get instantaneous, not literally, but a lot of people tend to chime in. We have a great community there as well. So more than just Michelle and I. So yeah, it was lovely, and we'll talk to you guys soon for Q&A 34.
Wow, 34, yeah.
Getting there.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me